Kicking off this Saturday, Roy Keane's Sunderland will start a pre-season tour of Ireland when they play three Irish teams: Bohemians, Cork City and Galway United. Galway United, of course. At the helm they have, as their chief executive, formerly of Barings Bank, Mr. Nick Leeson, and apparently he's doing quite a good job. In his first managerial post in league with Sunderland chairman Niall Quinn, Roy has achieved dramatic success with the club in the past year, and it's only been a year. And the Irish involvement with the team in terms of ownership, sponsorship, players and management is giving Sunderland a rapidly growing fan base here in Ireland. Joining me this morning to take a look at the Sund Ireland phenomenon, as it's becoming known, is Damien O'Mara from the Colm and Jim Breakfast Show. Damien, good morning and welcome.
Good morning.
Well, yeah, it's only been a year, and I suppose it's one of those kind of stories that's kind of slipped by some of us. But, if you walk up and down the high street in any town or city in Ireland, you'll probably at some stage see some young fella wearing a Sunderland jersey.
Yeah, particularly so. And I think it's only when you realise just how low Sunderland were just over 12 months ago that you realise...
Let's actually go back there to where they were a year ago.
You're talking about a club who were relegated from the Premier League at the end of 2005-2006 season. Lowest points ever racked up by a team in the Premier League. Nearly became the first team in league football to go through a season without a home win. 40 million quid in debt. Fans turning on the chairman, as they normally do. Mick McCarthy, of course, was the manager at that point, and came out and said that his hands were tied somewhat because the money wasn't being made available.
So he wasn't able to buy players. That was his claim at the time.
That was his claim.
He was probably right too as well.
Yeah, he was sacked towards the end of the season. Bob Murray at the time was the chairman, who ended up being the receiver of all the angst. Rumours started circulating around April of last year that Niall Quinn, who is God on Sunderland in the North East, obviously finished his career playing with the club, that he was trying to put together a consortium to buy it out, which he subsequently did.
Why would he be bothered doing that?
The thing, I don't think people over here would recognise just how big Quinn is in terms of fan loyalty and the support he has. A song, Niall Quinn's Disco Pants, would have been a frequent chant on the terraces of the Stadium of Light.
Niall Quinn's Disco Pants
made it to number 59 in the UK charts.
Can you sing some of it?
I'm afraid I can't, and I did look for an MP3 and I couldn't find it. Obviously the testimonial as well, which just ahead of the 2002 World Cup donated vast amounts of money to charities in the Sunderland area. You would wonder why a man who was held in that regard and had that stature amongst the club supporters, was a hero on and off the field, would bother going back in, putting his money on the line,
something that looked
and his
like
reputation.
certain death at the time.
Yeah, and relatively cheap. £10 million sterling isn't an awful lot to buy a football club with. Now, you have to take into account as well that they were 40 million quid in debt. And it's remarkable. It's only when you look at that and you realise it's only 12 months tomorrow that Quinn and his Drumavale consortium got full control of the club. It's like there's a screenplay in this already.
Who are Drumavale?
It's mainly property... probably tycoons is the right word to use. Quinn is obviously the front man. Two publicans, Charlie Chalk and Louis Fitzgerald, who anyone who's ever had a pint in Dublin will have probably put some money to their back pockets. Aside from that, you've Sean Mulrine, Ballymore Properties involved. Jack Tierney, Paddy Kelly, Pat Byrne and Patsy Byrne are all involved in property. There's one Englishman. It's 8 Irishmen, 1 Englishman. John Hayes is Sunderland born and bred. He's a travel agent in the Sunderland area. So they're the men who came together to buy the club out.
With Quinn at the helm.
Quinn, obviously the front man, the PR machine, but really seems to be the driving force.
An Irish player, much loved Sunderland side, but nonetheless still an Irishman. An Irish consortium buyout of a club that looked like it was about to literally
go down the pan,
get shot out of the back end of a donkey. Right, it was worth zero. In fact, the negative equity was
it was unreal,
huge, absolutely huge. And of course, with negative equity comes that circle of disaster where you just keep going further down because you cannot afford to buy. Nobody will take a point on you.
Players don't want to sign. You start losing your training ground, losing your playing facilities. All the resources start to drain away. Sponsorship, obviously, as well. It all starts to fall through the bottom.
Now, he did not get a manager straight off the bat.
This was the problem. He assumed control on the 27th of July, which didn't give him an awful long run into the start of the season. He had a couple Kevin Ball is the head of the academy over there, took charge of the club towards the end of the season. Quinn decided, as well as my chairman role and running the takeover, I'll take charge for the initial couple of games of the season, which subsequently turned out to be somewhat of a disaster. They'd been linked with a couple of managers. Names are always going to get bandied around when club vacancies come up. Martin O'Neill, Sam Allardyce, the usual names who are associated with every job. Couldn't get them initially. Quinn took charge for the first 5 games, which ended in 5 straight defeats, including the lowest point was a League Cup game against Gerry, which you would imagine even a half decent Aircom League side should do the business against them. Beaten, after which Quinn in his post-match press conference said, "Relax, I need a bit of time, I have a world-class manager on the way," who subsequently turned out to be Roy Keane, which in itself...
Now, Roy Keane, obviously the Roy Keane part of this story becomes widescreen, and we'll get to that in a moment. But if Quinn... We can kind of understand why Quinn wants to go back there. I think it's his heart dragging him back there, not the money.
Oh, completely. I'd agree with you completely.
The consortium, well, the Irish kind of like to own things in England.
And sure, what else would you be doing with your money?
If it's not the lads trying to buy the Dome, they're buying football clubs. And, men with loads and loads of money have plenty of time to wait to see if it comes around good. So all these bits I can understand. Roy Keane being enticed to Sunderland... he'd managed to do his Celtic time, and you'd say to yourself, well, surely this is the moment to go
and take your time, relax, raise your 5 kids.
By the way, do nothing except raise your 5 kids.
Sit at home. He'd made a big deal towards the end of his time at United and Celtic about how he wanted to move away from the limelight and get his coaching badges and take his time off and relax, and then bang, straight into the Sunderland job.
But it's not even bang straight going back to take over Alex Ferguson's job, where he would have the resources. It would have been like, Haile Selassie going back to Ethiopia. Would have been incredible. Instead, he goes to Quinner's, turbocharged bin liner.
And certainly the public perception would have been that there isn't a particularly good relationship between Quinn and Keane over the whole Saipan issue.
Yeah,
I don't think any of us would take too kindly to being referred to as Mother Teresa in Keane's autobiography. So it's this coming together. It's just, I think if you were to say to people 12 months beforehand that, next year Niall Quinn is going to be the chairman of Sunderland Football Club and Roy Keane is going to be his manager.
How did he persuade Keane?
The man who seems to...
him?
Apparently so. The man who seems to be the middleman is Michael Kennedy, who's been Keane's advisor over the years, who's also done work with Quinn. He seems to have been... Keane had done his coaching badges. He was sitting at home. His whole life had been dedicated to football. And it's that withdrawal. What do I do? I don't have to go coaching. I don't have to go training. I'm missing the camaraderie of a dressing room. And it seemed to be the ideal fit that Keane was on his way to his badges, was looking to get back in. This job came up. And I'm sure there was the lure of the Irishness and being part of the Irish revolution of it as well. So,
well, I still find it very difficult to believe. There is no tape recording of what the meetings were like, but I can't imagine that, I'd say they were humorous at the very least. And then, presumably, ding, Roy went, this is exactly what I need. Challenge.
It's a challenge. And I think it's one of those jobs as well where you can look at it from his point of view. If you're going to go into your first job in management, maybe the best thing to do is go in somewhere where there's no expectations. There's very little resources. I don't think anyone would have expected them to come back up. You certainly wouldn't have got decent odds on them coming back up. And in a way, it was an ideal fit for him. Get in, settle down, be part of the rebuilding process.
But he also must have been promised, number one, the finances,
the resources
to buy the players.
But then when you look at it later on into his management, the actual amount of money he spent isn't a great deal. When you balance out,
wisely, though,
that's it. Yeah. It's all players he knew, former Manchester United players, former Irish international, a lot of loan deals. But the actual balance of what he paid out compared to what he got in for transfers is quite low. So it's a good business head on him.
So how much of the team has been replaced? And how much of it is now Irish?
Well, there's a considerable... He'd 9 Irish players at the club last year, including Kenny Cunningham was captain. He brought in... It brought 6 players in the transfer deadline day. Sizable Irish proportion. Graham Kavanagh, of course, he would have played with international level. David Connolly, same thing. And Liam Miller, who was his teammate at Manchester United. You've got 9 Irish players on the squad last year. Some of them were there beforehand. Stephen Elliott, Clive Clark had kind of held over from the Mick McCarthy era. And... they formed the backbone of the whole operation. It was it's a fairy tale. So many Irish players, the Irish manager, the Irish owners. Unique.
And the reaction on the terraces, what was that like?
It initially wasn't. Quinn, when the rumours started back in March and April of 2006 that Quinn was going to take over, and that was widely welcomed. That Quinn, as we mentioned, was seen as this saviour. When he promised a world-class manager and Roy Keane initially was delivered, there was a little bit of, pedigree. He's a great player. Great players don't always make great managers.
No, in fact, great players inevitably have a 90-1 sort of chance of becoming a good manager.
If you look at even look at the flip side, the great managers in the Premiership today, none of them were particularly great players. Wasn't particularly positive. Particularly, as well, he brought in his main man in terms of coaching is a guy called Tony Loughlin, who was his teammate at Nottingham Forest many moons ago, who again wouldn't have had a fantastic pedigree in terms of a player, but is highly regarded as a coach. So I think it was a massive element of surprise initially of, what can this guy do? He talks a good game. Will he be able to deliver a good game? Which he subsequently was able to do.
And of course, Keane turns out to have great managerial skills. He turns out to be, his coaching abilities second to none. His ability to study the transfer market intelligently, to bring in this Irish dimension. And also, he's very careful not to mouth off, and when he does mouth off, it's about Steve Staunton.
I think, and there's been an awful lot. I think there's been a massive, there's been a perceived change in how Keane controls himself and how Keane delivers himself. That he's been the man that was on the pitch has been replaced by this guy who turns up to press conferences in flash suits and is very clever,
dry, laconic. Yeah.
Careful in what he says. You can see the thought process he goes through when he delivers his press conferences, post-match interviews, which I think people have surprised people. I don't think people widely thought that element of him was there.
I wasn't surprised. Were you surprised? I just kind of always
I've had with him,
suspected that this guy was going to be good.
Yeah, from dealings I've had with him in the past, I've always got that impression of him, that maybe the public image of him wasn't completely fair. But his coaching, he's really taken the knowledge from the experience he's had with coaches like Alex Ferguson and Brian Clough before him at Nottingham Forest. He initially didn't spend an awful lot of time doing the actual training with the team. If you look at United, Carlos Queiroz is Alex Ferguson's right-hand man. Yeah. At Forest was a guy called Peter Taylor who did most of the coaching, and Keane seems to have adopted that model as well, is that this is what I want, this is how I want them set up.
This is what I want, this is how I want it done, you do it. And I'll come now and then to have a look at it and see what's happening.
And he made a big issue of that at the start, that, I'm not here to get involved with the lads 5 days a week. I'm here to manage the club, and I'm here to look after the overall direction forward.
Now we do begin then to see, to be honest, a fairly, not just partially, but a mind-bogglingly dramatic turnaround.
It's Roy the Rovers.
Football fortunes. Yeah,
I think if you...
It's the Hotspur.
Yeah, if you went into a script meeting for Roy the Rovers 20 years ago and said, we're going to do this, it would be thrown out the window for being completely impossible. The day he signed his contract was their first victory of the season. He wasn't in charge. His first game was September the 9th, came back from behind to beat Derby 2-1. And the supporter, the increase in interest and stuff was evident. It was an away game, and they brought 5,000 Sunderland fans with them, which would have been unheard of up to that. You're then talking about a run, particularly from the start of January to April, where he went 17 games unbeaten. In the space of 37 league games, he brought them from being rock bottom to being top of the table, which nobody would have predicted. No one could have expected.
And a phenomenon that we've only associated with Manchester United normally are Celtic, where you get Irish people travelling on a weekly basis to watch English teams play. We're now seeing this with Sunderland. In fact, what is it? Ryanair increased their flights?
Ryanair have reported a 20% increase in direct flights to Sunderland on the day of a match. Hotels in the area are reporting you can't get a hotel room in Sunderland around the time of the games. The Chamber of Commerce are talking about an increase in business. They reckon jobs have been, the typical thing, the lads go to the football and the women go off shopping, and the retail sector are claiming this massive increase in sales and stuff as well. Property of late, the same thing. There was an article only in papers in Sunderland last week where Irish companies are buying up areas in the Docklands and the rundown areas of Sunderland.
So this is the greening of Sunderland.
Well, it's red, white and green. It's they really, the whole area, massive property developments moving in, buying up the Docklands areas, buying up the areas around the ground. Property prices have gone up through the roof, and they're putting all this down to the Irish interest, and not only the Irish social interest and fans going across, because it's obviously an awful lot easier. No offence to their attendances, but it's an awful lot easier to get tickets to a Sunderland game. And if you want to see top class footballers, particularly this season in the Premiership, fly to Sunderland, you're almost assured of getting tickets rather than trying to scramble to get tickets for United, Liverpool, Arsenal, whatever.
And what about the stadium? What about the facilities there?
It's massive. It's world class. It is as good a stadium as you're going to get anywhere in England. They moved out of Roker Park a couple of years ago into the Stadium of Light, and it's world class, top modern stadium.
So you're going there with Irish. You've got it's a nice enough city.
Oh yeah,
it's not Paris now, right? But it's a nice enough place.
Have a good night out anyway.
You'll have a good night out. They've got good beer and plenty of good restaurants, plenty of distraction, plenty of good retail. So this greening is, if not full, it's certainly becoming complete. Now let's look at the mirror reflection back here in Ireland. And the thing that has happened, I suppose, for decades, for generations, where you get young Irish people adopting English football teams. In the old days, it was the first, second and third division, mostly first division teams that were supported by particularly kids on the east coast of Ireland. Now, of course, that's the Premiership and right through the entire country. And soccer rivals, I think, either rugby or even the GAA national sports as an interest. But very rarely do you get what would be perceived as the lesser known or less successful teams, are those on the up, getting championed by the fans here in Ireland. But that's happening.
And it's certainly a case, like I worked in a sports shop when I was in college, and the idea of stocking a jersey from a team that was outside the top 6 or 7 in the Premiership was out the window. Now you see loads of kids, and I guarantee you the new kit that comes out ahead of this season, you're going to see more and more Irish kids with names and numbers on the back. And travel agents who are doing deals directly to Sunderland are reporting massive numbers of games that are on their way towards being sold out. The fanzine, the Sunderland fanzine, the more popular one, is called A Love Divided. This is the first country outside of England where they've actually appointed a supplier, and they're reporting massive sales in the fanzine over here as well. So I don't think it's just a passing interest. It's the type of thing where people are committing money to it and committing proper interest.
Because you can commit. You know, I don't know whether you've ever been in that Celtic pub up in Glasgow,
yeah.
Right. Well, you know what the atmosphere there is like. It's like being on the Falls Road. It's mind-boggling. It's as Irish as you can possibly get. And that's what we're looking at now. We're beginning to look at that. It will become like that.
And you even see what the demand
without the sectarian issue.
Yeah, you see the demand for the games this weekend. I've never experienced a situation before where a television station is going to cover TG Carr
covering the friendlies here in Ireland.
That's never happened before. Yeah, Monday. I have the dates in front of me. They play Bohemians Monday, on Saturday rather, Cork on Monday, and then Galway on Wednesday. I guarantee you, each and every one of those grounds is going to be packed out.
Now, it doesn't end there though, because the greening, and particularly the Euro greening, continues with the I was going to say the invasion by, but that wouldn't be the correct financial term to use, the association with Sunderland, with Boyle Sports, and we have Leon Blanche on the line. Leon, good morning to you.
Hiya, Gerry.
From Boyle Sports. Well, I suppose after listening to Damien give us this story, this extraordinary Irish story, and this work in progress, because this is by no means anywhere near the end of this story, no surprises that somebody like Boyle Sports would come along and become sponsors.
Yeah, well, Gerry, I think we took a bit of a leap of faith. It was back in March last year, like when I suppose they were trying to get up into the Premiership. I think everybody was hoping maybe like for a playoff berth, but we all know what happened. They went straight on. They won the championship. Now they're up in the Premiership. But we, as an ambitious Irish company, looked at Sunderland as a bit of a sleeping giant. I mean, when they've got a stadium capacity here of 49,000, and I think with Roy Keane, with Niall Quinn, and as you've said all about the Irish interest, we thought it would be a perfect fit. We've signed up for an initial 4 years.
What does that involve, Leon?
Well, what we're going to be, Gerry, is we're on obviously all of the jerseys. We're also going to be the official betting partner of Sunderland. We're going to be we will have our corporate box here at the Stadium of Light where we can entertain guests.
Like myself and Damien, obviously.
We're on the way.
Myself and Damien. I'll stick to a side for the Liverpool game.
Come on, thank you. Might as well clear up this straight away.
You're right too, not messing around.
I just think we looked at it and we thought it was a great fit for us. Looking at Roy Keane, he's a hero at home. Niall Quinn is also a hero at home. And as ourselves at Boyle Sports, we just thought it would be a great fit.
Now, what does it do for your business? Because I'm not sure how much of your business is UK based. Is it the association with Keane and Quinn? Is it the association with the team and their success story, or is it purely business, dealing with punters on both sides of the pond?
I think it's a part of all the things that you've just mentioned, Gerry. Obviously, with the UK market, I think for a branding exercise, it will certainly get the name out there, especially on the UK, because we don't have a floor or a shop level over here in the UK as of yet. Looking at our internet business, it's already improved because of boylesports.com. A lot of people, we have a direct link with Sunderland's website, so anybody who would like to place a bet on anything Sunderland will be linked directly through their site. It comes straight onto our site. And I think just looking at it on an overall terms of a UK base, it will just make the name, I think, Boyle Sports known to everybody in the UK. I was over here for the away jersey. I'm actually in the Stadium of Light at present as I speak to you, and they've got an opening training session, and the amount of people who have come here today, it's unbelievable. I mean, the level of interest in the northeast for Sunderland is huge, and I also think with the Irish trip, of course, they've got 3 games in 4 days. It will just make everybody aware of what's going on.
Can I ask you the tribunal question? Obviously, you have to give odds on fixtures that make sense from a bookie's point of view. If it looked like the team that you sponsored didn't stand a monkey's, Would you jig the odds so that you didn't look like Cretan support or something?
We could never do that, Gerry. I think one of the most important things you have to do is you've got to give odds as you see them happening.
Yeah.
I bet that is really, really attracting a lot of interest. When we opened up a couple of specials on Sunderland, Roy Keane was available at 25 to 1 to be named the Premiership Manager of the Year. That's been back all the way in. It's now available at 14 to 1. And there's a couple of other odds out there, a top 10 in the Premiership, which might be achievable when you look at the stories like Reading, like Wigan, year before last. That's been back from an opening show of 4 to 1. It's now into 15 to 8. And if you think that they might lift the FA Cup from 80 to 1, and that's now into 66 to 1. For the 3 Irish games, if you think Sunderland will win all 3 games, it's available 13 to 8. And we have seen a lot of interest over in the UK, which means obviously a lot of people are logging on to our website and they're placing all their bets now. So it's really drummed up a whole load of interest.
Well, we know that Taoiseach placed a bet on Fianna Fáil going back into power. Does Roy Keane ever place a bet with Boyle Sports?
Not as of yet, Gerry, but we might be able to twist his arm. I don't think he'd be taking those odds of 14 to 1, but to be Manager of the Year. But I think Roy might be quiet and he might have a little bet.
You want to make sure now, if there's a massive bet on at 50 to 1 for Roy Keane to get sent off in the first game as manager, if a big wedge comes in on that now, you might want to do a bit of an inquiry.
And stand well back from it too. You're in the Stadium of Light actually today as we speak. In fact, I think that's where you are this morning. What are you there for today?
Well, it's the home launch, Gerry, of their jersey. They launched with the away jersey was earlier on in the month, and today with their launching the home jersey. So what they've done is they've opened up the club store at 9:30 this morning, where people are actually able, to go in and buy the jersey. And now what they've got is they've got an opening training session. So all the kids and all of their parents are here. And I mean, I'm literally only 10 to 15 feet away, from all of these superstars, I suppose, especially for the young kids. I mean, it's a great chance for them to actually come in free of charge, of course, and have a look at their players and, of course, have a chance to see Roy Keane.
It's great. Now, it's obviously something that won't happen forever, but, lick it while you can. It sounds absolutely wonderful. Leon, thanks very much for talking to us, and I hope your association proves to be a fruitful one. I've no doubt, actually, in fact, that it will. Good morning to you.
Thank you very much, Gerry. We'll send those 2 tickets in the post.
Good man.
Yeah, no need to say it to anybody else about this, all right. TG Carr will show the Sunderland tour here in Ireland starting on Saturday. Now, just leaving aside this extraordinary story, and we'll come back to it, I think, over the coming months.
I think there'll be plenty of reasons to as well.
Plenty of reasons to come back to it. Another external club outside the Aircom League, LA Galaxy.
Yeah.
You were just mentioning to me that this is a phenomenon, kind of, and in fact, comparable in a way to the Sunderland story, even though David Beckham doesn't have any Irish blood in him.
We know of, anyway.
He did play for Manchester United. But you've observed something happening that is brand new, really, isn't it?
Like I mentioned earlier on about the Sunderland jerseys, I've never seen American football team jerseys available, everywhere. I was in Lifestyle Sports in Sligo on Monday, and there was only 2 left on the shelf, and the guy was telling me, oh no, we've sold.
These are the LA Galaxy Beckham shirt,
pre-printed with Beckham on them already. But not only that, the club have relaunched their entire colour scheme. They rebranded the entire club, brand new jerseys. Everything is Beckham mania. But
what colour is
white.
The jersey?
The home jersey's white. The away one is navy. They sold 360,000 jerseys in 48 hours last week when he was unveiled.
Sweet job.
The only thing it's comparable to is when he signed for Real Madrid. Madrid had a warehouse of tracksuits that they couldn't get rid of for love nor money. This is true, and I swear to God. And they said, some Spaniard said,
"Oh, I love this.
Your man Beckham. Know that tracksuit? How about we stick him in it for his first interview?
Yeah, 400,000.
Bang. 24 hours. It's insane. I've never in my life seen an MLS jersey available over here. And it's surprising as well because there's actually quite a number of Irish guys playing over there who are doing quite well.
On Galaxy?
No, in the American leagues.
In the American League.
Never get a whiff.
Let me ask you, since you're still here, we know Beckham's getting an awful lot of money. I think it's about $10 million. Yeah. The $150 million thing is nonsense. That's if he gets Pepsi-Cola and Emporio Armani.
His share of the commercial takings
for LA Galaxy. Yeah. And you know what? There's no better man to do it. Yeah. So that may come in. That corporate share may come in. In fact, in all likelihood, he probably will end up with an awful lot more than 10 million. But he is getting 10 million. It's a lot of dosh. In American terms, it's out there. Yeah. What about his teammates? I mean, I'm hearing figures like 15, 20 grand.
The guy after him earns, I think it's about 140 grand a year. there's members of the team are making $7,000-8,000 a year. You know, that's the scale of what you're dealing with.
Well, I wonder what that's going to do for team spirit.
I know, yeah. You know, and they showed a picture in one of the papers last week where he was walking off the training pitch with two guys. And
I'll pass you the ball if you pass me your wallet.
But they worked out that Beckham earns in a minute what these guys earn in a month, and it's not even at the races compared to what he's making. Well, because it's not popular. Like, there's a good friend of mine lives in San Francisco, and I was talking to him about it. He was in LA, and I said, you know, has Beckham mania kicked in? He said, to be honest with you, he said the natives don't know he's coming. The natives don't know what soccer is. They know who Beckham is. They just don't know that there's a football team playing half a mile down the road.
So really what these guys are hoping, they've got Errol Flynn, Bono, Brad Pitt, Colin Farrell, all rolled into one.
Yeah.
And they're hoping that regardless of the football, that the profile will do the business.
And the same again, Galaxy are already talking about coming over to England for pre-season friendlies next year. I can guarantee you there'll be an Asian tour. I was in Beijing a couple of weeks ago, and the only football jersey you saw was a Real Madrid jersey with David Beckham's name and number on the back.
So that's also a story to watch and watch very closely.
That's the whole thing.
Okay, Damien, thank you very much for talking to us this morning, and looking forward to seeing you at the Liverpool game.
Thank you.
I think that was very decent of him, and I don't think that there's any sort of compromise involved. I don't think we should be embarrassed about it, or I don't think that we've used any sort of insider knowledge or anything like that, or tried to use our position here in RTE to try and push the man or twist his arm or.
Good morning and welcome to Conversations with Eamon Dunphy. Today we celebrate an upcoming movie that has been 18 years in the making, The Simpsons. Yes, indeed. And for the first of our frank interviews with the Springfield residents, we're joined by Montgomery Burns.
Excellent.
Monty, the 3 spots on your head quite clearly indicate that you're suffering from cancer as a result of your immoral nuclear activities.
You filthy little scoundrel! I ought to give you the thrashing of a lifetime! Smithers,
yes.
Who is this rascal?
It's Eamon Dunphy, sir. He works in Sector 7G.
Waylon Smithers, thanks for joining us. You are a homosexual, are you not?
Are you coming on to me?
No.
Here's my number, you little minx.
Very kind. Now, Homer Simpson...
Can I have a donut?
Homer, your obesity is out of control, and...
Why do you smell of pee?
Wait a second, Homer, I mean...
Are you a homeless man?
Homer, please, for God's sake, I'm trying to...
Can I have a beer?
Right, have a bloody beer, then.
Woohoo!
I hear you do an impression of me, Homer.
My name is Mr. Dunphy. Blah, blah, blah. Do this, do that. Blah, blah, blah.
Why, you little...
Hey, that's my line.
Dope. Very enjoyable indeed. Thank you, Homer.
Woohoo!
Now, Mayor Quimby, you are Springfield's most crooked politician.
For the last time, Bertie Ahern had no hand, act, or part in the acceptance of cash payments in most taverns during episode 157. I took the money myself.
And did you get a receipt?
Did I fuck? Good day to you.
Brilliant. Troy McClure, you're...
Hi, I'm Troy McClure. You might remember me from such conversations...
Yes, we know who you are, but...
Hi, I'm Troy McClure. You might remember me from such interruptions
just forget it, McClure. I'm sick of speaking to all of you. You can just... get out!
What the devil?
Hey, homeless man!
What?
We don't have to take this crap from you.
Wait a minute.
Yes, look at you, a shabby, tweed-suited nobody.
Yeah,
Why, you're nothing but a brat.
And his skin is in very bad condition.
Not to mention his eyebrows.
Wait a minute.
Tell him, Reverend Lovejoy.
Eamon Dunphy, you have sinned
Please.
by criticizing great players while you yourself were a mere journeyman footballer at Millwall.
Not fair.
Yeah, you whiskey-nosed,
Filthy head.
Mad-toothed.
beer-swilling moron.
Guys.
Hey, let's do a song.
Yes!
Oakley dokley, pilgrims.
Excellent.
Who gets off his head at night? Who ends up in Lily's fight?
Please.
Amo.
Guys.
Amo.
I can explain.
Who gives Johnny Giles a fright? Who is always talking shite?
Well.
Amo.
I suppose I do.
Amo.
Dow.
Yes, at last the Simpsons movie is upon us. And as we spoke to Charlie O'Connor, TD, early on this week, we had the proposal that Springfield, Vermont in the United States should not be the only Springfield hosting a Simpsons premiere. Why not have it in Springfield and Tala? Could it happen? Could it be possible? Had we the ability to face this kind of challenge? Yes. 300 people this morning will sit down in the UCI, in Tala, in Springfield, and they will eat their free and indeed incredibly tasty ice creams, courtesy of HB, thank you very much indeed, and enjoy the Irish premiere of The Simpsons movie, which is quite good, I believe. Evelyn O'Rourke, good morning.
Good morning, Gerry Ryan. There you go.
Well, we had, to put it mildly, a confetti of responses. We were offering people the opportunity to email us on a specially designated Simpsons email line, which of course is obviously closed now. We have 300 seats, and also we visited St. Mark's Primary School, where you, Evelyn, in your own way, brought about the remarkable response that we heard already just there a few moments ago from the decent, the fine, the good people of Springfield in Tala. Well, the witching hour is upon us. What does that mean? Nothing. It doesn't mean anything, really. Well, the moment has arrived. The day has come. The die is cast. How are things down there?
Things are marvellous here at the UCI in Tala. Let's see if they're all awake, Gerry, because there's a lot of bleary eyes here. Are you awake? Are you ready to see this movie? Yes! Are you enjoying your ice cream? Yes! Ben and Jerry's, Gerry. Ben and Jerry's. It's really ooh la la here this morning. You have a choice between piece of cake or chocolate fudge brownie Ben and Jerry's ice cream here this morning. I'll bring you back a few cartons for your holidays. And everybody's very excited. Lots of Bart lookalikes here, actually.
And Bart lookalikes, have people actually dressed up, have they?
Well, it's about the hair, you know. It's all about, that
right. So they actually,
sorry,
so you're actually saying they really actually do look like Bart. That's quite unusual.
They really are, Bart. What's interesting is any boy you talk to is aged between about 7 and 12 says Bart is their favourite. You ask the girls, they love Lisa. I'm a Lisa fan. And you ask anybody else, it's all about Homer. Homer. But I'm thinking by the end of this movie, Spider Pig will be the #1 star.
So let's take a listen.
Spider Pig does whatever a Spider Pig does. Can he swing from a web? No, he can't. He's a pig. Look out, he is a Spider Pig.
Oh, yes, it's so good, isn't it? It's so
fantastic. Good. We're dying to meet Spider Pig this morning. We'll be kicking off here, Gerry, at about 9:45. The movie lasts about 90 minutes, so we'll enjoy that. Then we'll come out the other end, if we survive and make it that far, and we'll talk to you and give you our first reactions to the Simpsons movie.
OK, we're looking forward to it. The turnout has been fulsome, I believe.
Fantastic. We have Charlie Connors here, of course, and Sean Finnerty is here. I'll put you on quickly to Sean. Sean is a 6-year-old. He lives in Springfield. He goes to school in St. Mark's, and he's a real Bart fan. Say good morning to Gerry, Sean.
Good morning.
Good morning, Sean Finnerty. Are you looking forward to the Simpsons movie?
Yes.
What do you think it's going to be like?
Great.
Great. Have you got your ice cream? Which one are you eating?
I don't like that one.
You don't like...
Kids are animals.
Out of the mouths of babes. Like something Bart would actually say. Now, Sean Finnerty, are you listening to me?
Yeah.
I want you to tell everybody who's listening, people who might not know who Bart Simpson is. What is he like? Describe Bart Simpson in your own words.
He has pointy hair, he has a red shirt, and he has blue and white.
Blue and white. What kind of blue and white thing does he have? He's got a blue and white. What is it? A blue and white shoes.
Blue, white, and shoes.
That's right. Now, go on.
And he has yellow skin.
And he's yellow skin. And what does he say?
Eat my shorts.
Eat my shorts. That's what Bart Simpson says. Yes. Does he ever fart?
No.
Never? I think he does sometimes.
He does.
He does, doesn't he? He does. I think he does. Do you? Do you ever fart?
Lots of times.
When was the last time you farted?
Just 2 minutes ago.
2 minutes ago. Can you do a fart? Do a fart noise for everybody listening. Go on.
Stop it! Stop it, my nerves!
Can you do one as good as that?
No.
No. You mean I've beaten you in the fart noise competition?
Yes.
Oh, yes. Yes! Eat my shorts! Okay, Sean Finnerty, you enjoy your Simpsons movie this morning, and I want to talk to you after the movie's finished, right? And to hear what you thought all about it, okay?
Yeah.
All right. I don't like the ice cream. I love
Kids are animals.
Oh, I love it.
Kids are animals.
He sounds like he's all up for it anyway, so we look forward to that. Now, you go off and enjoy yourselves. Have you anybody else there for me to talk to?
Well, listen, Mayor Quimby himself, Charlie O'Connor's arrived. He got a bet from 20th Century Fox, who are supplying the film this morning, that if he came dressed as Mayor Quimby, they would donate €1,000 to the Children's Hospital Fund here at Tala.
Oh, great.
So in fairness to Charlie, he's done the business and he's looking very respectable.
In fairness, Gerry, it's a blue suit and a red tie. So, by the way, I like ice cream. For God's sake, say that. But Gerry, can I just say?
He's liking everything this morning.
Gerry, can I just say this has been an amazing gig and well done to you. Evelyn's been brilliant out here, as you can imagine. But it's really great to see hundreds of people, and we're going to have a band when the film is finished. So it's really good for Springfield. You've really helped, and the Children's Hospital at Tala will also make a few euros too, thanks to your promotion. So thanks very much for that.
Well done, Charlie O'Connor. It's been a pleasure. Thank you for coming to us with the idea. You started it off. Well done.
You're very kind, Gerry. But it has been great. You ran with it, and it's got really good mileage. And I mean, people have been very positive. It's been, as the UCI have said, it's been a very good image for Tala, a very good image for Springfield. So well done in that regard.
Okay, well done. We'll talk to you later and get your opinions about what you thought of the movie, okay?
Excellent, excellent.
Okay, I'm going to say good day to you. Good luck, Evelyn. Enjoy the movie. Enjoy the ice cream, which I know everybody will, except Sean Finnerty. All right, take care, and I hope you have a fantastic morning, everybody. Well, it's been a tough few days for the space agency NASA. Mostly it's good news, or at the worst, sometimes confusing news that comes from NASA, but it's basically very clear bad news that's been coming from the National Aeronautical Space Agency over the last few days. First, a computer which was due to be flown to the International Space Station was sabotaged. What does that mean exactly? Well, we'll find out in a second. This came a day before the Aviation Week magazine revealed that on at least 2 occasions, astronauts were allowed to fly while pissed in space. Pissed in space. And yesterday afternoon, an explosion killed 2 workers at the Mojave Desert Airport. That's the site used by the pioneering aerospace company that sent the first private manned rocket into space. Remember, we had him in the studio here, Bert Rutan. He was telling us all about it, and he sounded like a very interesting guy. And it certainly was very exciting stuff that he was talking about pioneering. We're joined now by a man on the line who knows probably more about space than I've had hot breakfasts. Leo Enright, good morning.
Morning, Gerry.
Well, it's not been a good week for space, really. Sure it hasn't.
No, Gerry, I mean, leave aside the tragedy, which we can talk about in a moment, but other than that, I mean, I really do wonder, Gerry, you know these guys in the Simpsons movie, they've been coming up with all these advertising gimmicks, like painting Homer Simpson on the beside the chalk man and things like that. They've been coming up with amazing stunts, but I never thought they'd go so far as to try and put it around that Homer Simpson is now flying the space shuttle.
Because that's kind of what it sounds like.
It surely sounds like it. I mean, somebody has been messing with one of the computers that they're planning to use aboard the space station, and we now hear this extraordinary story. I mean, I've covered, Gerry, as you know, man and boy. I've been covering the space program since the days of the moon landing, so that's a long time. And I have never seen a press conference like the one we got last night from NASA, describing how they had found this thing, this tampered with a computer, and also batting away questions, a lot of questions about these astronauts allegedly drunk getting into the rocket.
Okay, well we'll talk about the computer first, and then we'll talk about pissed in space, as it's going to become known in this programme. Anyway, was the computer, first of all, how significant was the computer?
Well, Gerry, let's be clear about this. I mean, it really wasn't terribly significant at all. It's not mission critical. It's just a computer that's used to transfer information from a sensor, a device that basically on the space station listens out for bangs and prings from meteorites and things like that. So it was really just an engineering device, nothing of major significance. But obviously the fact that the item actually got as far as Cape Canaveral before they picked up on this bit of sabotage is a bit disturbing, all right.
How serious was the sabotage? And, obviously sabotage by definition is intentional and malicious damage.
Yeah, they clearly believe that. It sounds, obviously, I think it sounds like a disgruntled worker, basically. The first question that people asked in their minds, and also ultimately at the press conference late last night, was this related to a very bitter, really bitter industrial dispute at Cape Canaveral at the moment. Gerry, when there's a labour dispute in NASA, now these are in the companies, the contractors that supply the space program, when there are disputes, for some reason, they are always far more bitter than any dispute I've ever covered here in Ireland. I don't know what it is about these people, but they really do. They get the dander up. And so the first thing people were saying was, was this related to the strike at Cape Canaveral? Well, it's not, apparently. It's related to an incident at a contractor thousands of kilometres away. And, as I say, not a danger to the space shuttle or the space station.
But nonetheless, a piece of equipment that does monitor something serious. And I suppose if they're capable of sabotaging something that isn't mission critical, they're capable of sabotaging something that is mission critical.
Exactly. It does. It raises some disturbing questions. So there will be, I have no doubt, an inquiry into this.
And I would imagine that the press conference was, I think Frank will answer that question.
Well,
yes.
These are guys now, they're pretty laid back, Gerry.
I've seen them in action all right.
They're kind of Clint Eastwood type guys. They're guys who've been around the block a bit. And they kind of look at, these are guys who've been in the space program for a long time. And all of them looked like they had just eaten the most bitter gooseberry tart you can ever imagine. They really had that look on their face that they didn't want to be there.
Okay, that aside, and I'm sure that they will look deeply into what happened and what was motivating whoever sabotaged the piece, because one thing they weren't always was transparent, but they certainly seem to have improved in NASA on that end of the scale quite a bit. Mostly due to the fact that there's any number of fellas willing to make documentaries and interview former employees and executives who are willing to go on the record and went, I have the 55 emails I sent saying that the O-ring was going to fail. So that's going to be in the public domain in the not too distant future. Now, pissed in space.
Yeah, this is a quite extraordinary story that broke late last evening on the website of Aviation Week. It's the kind of Beano for generals. It's the big industry magazine for people in the aerospace business. Very, very reliable magazine to get information from. And they've come across an early copy of this report that was done by an American military doctor who's been looking into how NASA monitors its astronauts in the wake, of course, of that shocking business of the astronaut who drove halfway across the country to, as she said, have a conversation with her love rival. The police say she wanted to kidnap her. So they, naturally enough, they want to look at how did this woman get through the system. And in the process, this guy has come up with this extraordinary, it's just one paragraph in a 12-page document, but he refers to two incidents where astronauts had been drunk and where doctors had said they were too drunk to fly and had flown in space.
But, how bad are we talking about open the pod bay doors, Hal, really? Open the pod bay doors, Hal, or is it just having taken alcohol.
Well, Gerry, I think this is absolutely pertinent to how this is going to be played internationally, because I think to an extent we're talking here about a cultural thing.
Yeah.
The Russians don't think twice.
Oh, no, they take it on board deliberately.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The Russians are very easy about this, and their doctors say, look, the guys should have a drink now and again. It relaxes them. They're entitled to it after a hard day's spacewalking. So the Russians have a very clear idea in their own minds about this. The Americans, on the other hand, the culture clash that has taken place between the Americans and the Russians now that they actually live and work together in space.
Well, it's like the difference between the Episcopalian and the Orthodox Church, basically, isn't it?
It's pretty striking. I mean, I've been watching this now over the past 10 years, and it's been, as we say in Dublin, Gerry, it's been a revelation to watch these people. There are some American astronauts who blend incredibly well with the Russians. And to be honest, they tend to be the astronauts who take a social drink, as we would say here at home. And then you get these people these jocks, these flyboys.
Oh, what was called in the right stuff, was it the Dudley Do-Rights?
Yes, exactly. And there's still quite a few of those in the space program, and they would take an entirely different view. So I noticed even my colleagues in the media, it was interesting at the press conference that my friends covering the space program, who again would be inclined to take a social drink now and again, they were sniggering at this. They thought this was kind of fun and a bit cutesy. There was the other guys, the Dudley Do-Rights of journalism, who looked extremely shocked.
Well, I think you're absolutely correct in identifying the cultural issue. That's what it is. There are guys who would be in the NASA space program. There are certainly senior members of the test flying program and the American military and Air Force who, in fact, the very idea of having a drink even on a Saturday night when you're not doing anything is kind of almost, oh my God, you're going to go mad. Satan's in the room.
Exactly, yeah.
So I presume that they're the people who are giving us the analysis of how dreadful this is.
I think we're going to see a fair bit of this, Gerry. I thought it was very interesting that this bizarre story about sabotage came out just an hour or two before this other story broke. And I'll be blunt with you, Gerry, I began to wonder, now hang on a second. The engineers in NASA have always told me, Leo, there's no such thing as a coincidence. There's always some connection between things. When things go wrong in a machine, you don't put things down to coincidence. You look for a reason. And in this case, I wondered to myself, in the culture that, in a particular part of American culture, the idea that something was sabotaged, it almost isn't as bad as somebody being drunk. And so maybe the sabotage story, in a sense, has been covering the drunk story.
Because over here we think that the drunk story was actually put out to cover the sabotage story, which we would take much more seriously. But no, in the Episcopalian churches of Middle America, you can be bloody sure that the drinking on duty story would have been far more serious, and to hell with the fact that the space station was kind of going out of its orbit. Much more significant was the fact that the boys had a beer in the process. All right, stay with us, Leo.
Jerry, just one thing. It is important to make one point about this, if I may, just finally. There is one issue here. I would be astonished if, when this report is published at 5 o'clock Irish time, I would be astonished if I read that this happened in America. Because if this happened while the astronauts were under American discipline at Cape Canaveral,
they'd be drummed out.
Well, this would be really serious, because this would suggest that something disastrously wrong has happened in the American space program. My own guess is that this happened in Russia. That would be my guess. My guess is that these are guys who are about to head off for 6 months on a space station, living in a tin can, and somebody said, Yera, what the heck?
Yeah, here's a few beers. As a matter of fact, have a few now and then take a few with you on the flight. Yeah, that's exactly what happened. You're dead right. Okay, back in a moment, and we're going to talk about the explosion in the Mojave Desert in or around Bertrutan's complex, a guy who we had here in studio talking about his very real endeavours in the world of putting private aviation into space. Leo, we've had a look at piston space. We've now arrived at the third story, a very significant and indeed tragic story. Coming at a time when I suppose we were all anticipating that something like this could happen, but hoping that it wouldn't. Bert Rutan, who we had in the studio a couple of months back, telling us all about his work, not only in the world of private space travel, where he had made huge and, as we know now, real inroads, where we had witnessed one of his craft actually going into space. Now it seems that the unthinkable has happened, but it wasn't the unexpected. Sure, it wasn't.
Well, Gerry, this is a very shocking story in many respects. I mean, 2 men dead, 2 badly hurt, 2 others with slightly less serious injuries. Bert Rutan, in fact, himself just arrived back in Mojave a few hours ago, and he appeared to be quite emotional when he arrived at the airport. What appears to have happened is that during testing of the injector that pumps nitrous oxide, there's 2 fuels that they burn on this revolutionary spaceship that Rutan has designed: nitrous oxide, which is laughing gas, effectively, and rubber. Is the fuel for this rocket. And they were testing how they introduced the nitrous oxide into the mix when there was apparently a large explosion. Now, the aerial pictures of the scene certainly show considerable damage around the test stand, and I'm afraid this is a pretty shocking reminder that the whole business of firing people into space is still fraught with danger.
I was also reminded when I thought back on how exactly Bert Rutan's rockets worked. They're basically controlled explosions. That this isn't really all that much different from the technology employed by the Germans with their ballistic missiles, and indeed with their very early attempts at rocket fighter jets. We had the Comet, which was basically run exactly like this. It was a controlled explosion. And when they were actually fueling up back in the final days of the Second World War, the 2 chemicals were so volatile that even transporting them was a kind of kamikaze mission for the guys who were involved in the fueling mission. Now, obviously, there isn't really much difference between the kind of things, the challenges that faced those guys who were putting together the German missiles and the German Comet plane. There's not really that much difference between that and what has happened with Bert Rutan's setup.
No, indeed. I mean, these are highly volatile substances that are being used, and in fact, they've had hazardous emergency crews out at the site all night working on this. We do tend to, now that people are flying into space more regularly, we do tend to think of it as being a more routine thing. But I have to say, Gerry, that anytime I watch a space shuttle take off, my heart is in my mouth. These are incredibly violent events. And all we're doing really is controlling this explosion, and very often that places you just on the edge of what is possible. And I think people will certainly be reassessing the whole space tourism thing in the light of this. Human beings are frail. We are not really built to be flying at these speeds. And, I would certainly expect that some of the people who were cheerfully putting down $100,000 or $200,000 to fly on this thing will be thinking twice.
Now, we know that Richard Branson is one of the entrepreneurs who's behind turning Bert Rutan's ideas into a commercial reality. The test pilots have already gone into space, but now it's time for those, as you've put it, who've paid the $100,000 or the $200,000 to start training up and getting ready. Is that program going to be put on ice?
Well, it'll be very interesting to see, because Virgin Galactic are paying for this program, the whole test program to develop this, and they've set a very, very tight schedule. They're talking about having the first paying passengers flying on this rocket called Spaceship 2 by 2009. That is a very, very tight schedule to develop something. The Virgin people are spending $200 million supporting this development program, and they want to see something at the end of it. So Rutan will obviously have to look at this. You'll have to assess whether this was an accident that could have happened in your average car workshop, or whether it was specifically related to the dangers that we've already discussed. But I have to say, Gerry, it's actually not the first accident this week. There was a very strange accident, an explosion of sorts, at a development plant run by the man who's promoting missions to Mars. Now, this guy has a factory just outside of Boulder in Colorado, and there was an explosion. Nobody was hurt, but it shocked and frightened the neighbors. Now, when I say neighbours, this guy has his rocket factory in the middle of quiet suburban Boulder, Colorado. And I looked at it on Google. I just, keyed in the address, as one can do with Google Earth. And I was really quite shocked to see that this guy has a fairly large, industrial complex bang next to the backyards of a lot of people, out mowing their lawns.
And what was he doing? I mean, I've heard of this Mission to Mars group. There are a lot of different scientists, most of them quite legitimate people.
Oh, yes, very much so,
who believe very strongly that the manned mission to Mars project has been set back by, the Iraq war being one of the big things, because the funding going to that, they feel, could easily have gone to the Martian project. But to be honest, I thought they were a bit sort of, like a kind of a Saturday afternoon drinking club or something, where people all just fantasised over little green men, but not at all. No, they're apparently quite serious. But I didn't know that they were actually building anything.
Well, this guy he's developing technologies which he says can be used on a mission to Mars, and he has got funding from the American military and from NASA. I think the coincidence, and it is a coincidence, of these two accidents in the same week, people are going to look again, I think. It's all very well being a flyboy. It's all very well being, an exciting, cutting-edge entrepreneur. But public safety will be, I think, loom in the minds of people after this week.
Okay, well, I was planning to head down. I think there's a space shuttle launch, isn't there, on the 8th?
That's right.
I was thinking of heading down to Cape Canaveral.
Give me a call. I'll be there.
Will you be there?
I'll definitely be there. Yeah, I'm going down for the launch of the Mars mission a couple of days earlier, and then the shuttle takes off towards the end of next week.
Okay, well, keep your phone on.
I will.
Leo Enright, good morning.
Gerry